Well, on the super theme, and related to the first question, what is the best way to compare super funds?
Yes. So advisors do this all the time, but if you don't want to pay for an advisor, what we do as part of the process is we have a list of questions, hard questions, that we use to call up the super fund and ask them.
Okay.
So the balance, obviously, and then ultimately, like where you're invested, currently where you're invested, look at the performance of that, but also how many investment options are there available in the fund, and then fees, obviously, as well. But interesting thing about fees is they vary between 1% and 2%. Performance varies a lot more than that. So it can be 10% difference between A fund performance and B fund performance. So performance does come into it even more so than fees.
Yeah.
I would say, and availability of investments, how many investments, and then ultimately other things like, is there a binding nomination available, insurance options, long list of questions that matter to you, and then sort of just ask that across the different funds and compare it that way, I would say.
Without calling the super fund, it's often quite hard to get a clear view on what they are invested in. They'll say Australian securities or private equity, but it's like, what is that? And so it feels like the solution is you've just got to give them a call and find out. But
even in that case, though, yes, they'll give you certain information, but that's one of the downsides of industry funds. They are cheap and a great solution if you're under a certain balance, in my opinion. Once you've got over $100,000 or thereabouts, maybe even less than that, you could be looking at other options where you've got more transparency. It's your hard-earned money. You don't actually have a right to know in some of these investment options. That's the way the industry funds are run.
What other options?
Other options are wrap super funds, where they wrap the reporting up for you. That's the term wrap is used for that. They do the reporting for you, but they offer a very wide sort of list of investments you can choose from and manage it yourself, essentially like a self-managed, but without the tax liabilities and paperwork that you have to do when you're running a self-managed. And the cost is sometimes similar. We don't realise they call them retail funds as well, or super wraps. The cost can be quite similar to an industry fund, depending on which industry fund you're in.
Yeah.
And the investment options can be hundreds or thousands more than what you might have in the industry fund.
Yeah. We actually had another question around industry funds, not just about investment options, which I agree, it's often hard to find. And then you open the AFR and you see that Australian super is now like standing in the way of Origin's acquisition. And it's like, well, that's... Yeah, you're not, where do you see that show up in your investment report? But anyway, that's another conversation. But we also had a question about finding out all of the fees that you get charged, and sometimes it's hard to find all the different fees to do like a true apples to apples comparison. The person that asked this question was actually looking at going back from an SMSF to an industry fund, but was struggling to do it. I guess, short of being an advisor and speaking to someone, how do you get a good view of all the different fees that you might be charged?
I think there are two main fees, really, but they just sort of change the wording in them, and sometimes they divide them up. So the two main fees are investment fees and then product fees for the super fund. And the investment fees, they're obliged to tell you. They have to tell you. And sometimes what they do is they might split it between like an asset-based fee and then another fee, but really it's just an investment management fee. So if you just ask what's the total investment management fee for a fund that you're in, they'll have to disclose that to you. And the other layer is the product fees. So again, that can be called an asset-based fee, admin fee, account keeping, but the total administration fees, product fees, they must disclose that to you. So they're the two main.
Equity mind.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.